Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be taking a look at the new supply drop update that Treyarch decided to finally implement late last night. Now, before we get started, I would like to thank you guys so much for the incredible support on my previous video. It was mind-blowing how much support there was, and that video was definitely a long time coming, and I'm also very happy to see that so many people are of the same mindset when it comes to how Call of Duty has been evolving over the course of the past couple of years. It would appear that community pressure is finally starting to get to Activision and Treyarch, and a lot of people are pointing to this most recent update as proof of that, but unfortunately, I really don't think that's the case, and I want to cover that here in today's video. So if you guys haven't heard, last night around 8 p.m. Eastern, Treyarch pushed through a hotfix that supposedly corrected all the problems that we have with the most recent black market changes. For starters, they made it so we can now once again earn supply drops at each tier past 100, and they also cut the time required to fill the supply drop bar in half, which means we will now be earning a supply drop once every hour instead of once every 2 hours. In the official patch notes, they tried to explain that giving us this new supply drop bar was meant to give players more frequent access to all the new content, which is pretty true if you think about it, right? But they also said, and I quote, "However, by moving progress toward reserves up front instead of at the end of the stream, this had an unintended effect on players who progressed through the first 100 tiers. Initial earn rates for Blackjack's reserve cases through gameplay were also too slow. These issues and more are being resolved today." So from the sounds of it, with the wording that they're using here, it sounds like all of this was just one big error, right? They're using phrases like these issues and unintended effects, and that actually does make a little bit of sense, at least to an extent, right? Because I do think it was an error that we could not purchase supply drops past tier 100, because if you guys don't know, before they pushed through this hotfix, you could literally buy tiers past 100 with real money and get absolutely nothing in return. Picture the little black bar that you guys see here. You would just keep on buying those and you would get nothing in return, and because of that, I feel as though one of two things has to be true, right? Either this was simply just an error that took them 3 days to fix for some reason, or they did not intend to let players purchase supply drops past tier 100 in the first place, but because there was another glitch that made it so we could purchase those tiers, their hand was basically forced, and they had to let us get these tiers past 100 again. Either way you look at it, it's good that we can finally get these tiers past 100 because we're going to be getting a lot more supply drops, and it's also good that they cut the supply drop earn time in half, but I don't think that this is the amazing act of charity that lots of other people are making it out to be, because one big thing that everybody seems to be forgetting here with this update is that they made supply drops a lot worse. Not only can supply drops be purchased, but they also pack them with way more content than ever before. We're talking about locking away new blackout characters, signature weapon variants, mastercraft variants, reactive camos, and pretty much everything else. Before this update, there was less than a handful of these variants in supply drops, and now there are a ton of them in supply drops. On top of that, content from previous operations is still locked away within these supply drops themselves. We're talking about the SWAT assault rifle, the Damon 3XP submachine gun, the Cap 45 machine pistol. All of these can only be obtained via supply drop now for people who either missed the operations or didn't own the game when the operations were actually live. On top of that, way more filler content has been added to supply drops to dilute your chances of getting something good. We're talking about 30 plus versions of each of the 2 new camos. We're talking about every single emote and spray and calling card from the previous operations, as well as all the new ones that were just added with Operation Grand Heist. Supply drops themselves are objectively worse than they were before. There are more good items than before, don't get me wrong, but there are way more filler garbage items on top of that, and the chances of you getting something good are incredibly low. And keep in mind that duplicate items are still a thing. Like, even though it's only now 1 hour to earn your supply drop, you get 1 item. It's not 3 items like it used to be, it's 1 item, and that 1 item is either going to be usually filler garbage or it's going to be a duplicate. Your chances of getting something good are insanely bad with this new update. Now, with that all being said, isn't it convenient that the new black market update released in such a terrible state by making it so we couldn't get tiers past 100 and it took 2 hours to get a single supply drop, and then Treyarch just swoops in after 3 days to fix it all, which just so happens to take everybody's mind off the fact that supply drops are now worse than they were before. before. We've learned countless times in the past that unintended problems with updates are acknowledged pretty much immediately, and then they are fixed as soon as possible. A great example of this, and I had to do a lot of digging to find this. I remember this happening, but I couldn't remember the exact dates or anything like that. But way back in the day, back in January of 2012, which for context was 7 months after I made my YouTube channel, Infinity Ward intended to nerf every single machine pistol in the Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer by about 50%. They wanted to cut down the fire rate on every single machine pistol. Well, the problem is, when they pushed through that update, they accidentally buffed every single machine pistol's fire rate by 30 to 50%, which was obviously a huge error, but they acknowledged it pretty much immediately. In the same day, they acknowledged the problem, and they fixed it with a 2 a.m. patch. It was basically active for give or take 12 hours or something like that. They fixed it as fast as they could. You then fast forward to today, and Treyarch releases the new Black Market update, and people immediately started pointing out problems with it. Immediately, YouTubers start making videos, and Reddit threads are being made, and I'm sure that each and every developer is being spammed on Twitter, and they said nothing. For 3 days, they said absolutely nothing until they eventually come out at 8 o'clock on a Friday and say, oh yeah, that was an accident. Here, we fixed it for you. Aren't we awesome? And now everybody is acting as if this was an amazing act of charity and that they're now listening to the consumer, when in reality, when you think about how bad the system was before, when you could literally purchase tiers that gave you absolutely nothing, and you had to play for 2 hours to earn one single supply drop item, which is likely going to be a duplicate, do you think that was really the intended system? Or do you think it's more likely that the intended system is what we see right now, but they were trying to see what they could actually get away with? That's what I think is happening, right? Remember back when the Battle Pass first went live and it took forever to level up the tiers, and then eventually, after a couple of weeks, they changed it based on community feedback? Do you not think they were also just trying to test the waters to see how much they could get away with right there before eventually fixing it? I think the exact same thing is happening here. Now, don't get me wrong. I like the fact that the system has been changed. What we see right now is objectively better than what we had before, because we're still earning supply drops past tier 100 like we were before, and we're now also earning a free supply drop every hour of in-game playtime. This is obviously better than what it was before, but it's still worse than what we had during Call of Duty World War II. It's still worse than what we saw during Infinite Warfare, and also keep in mind that the supply drops themselves were made much worse with this update as well. So they're still locking away as much content as they were before, except now they're also locking away a bunch of new items, and to compensate for all the new good items, they've added a massive amount of filler. We're talking everything from making it so we have to earn each of the 2 new camos on every single individual gun, or making it so we now have things like parachute skins and dive flares for your blackout characters and stuff like that. They're just decreasing your chances of getting good things out of supply drops. And obviously, good things are subjective, but I think most people, especially the people that weren't around during the previous operations, are after actual weapons and weapon variants and reactive camos and things like that. So, in my honest opinion, this update is a huge leap backwards with a couple of steps forward to soften the blow to the community, and it seems like everybody is so happy about this, when in reality, what we see right now after the hotfix should have been how it was at the very beginning. They waited 3 days to fix it, and the supply drop system itself is still much worse than what it was in previous Call of Duty games, which is not something I think we should be super excited about. So ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much all I have for you guys here in this video. I wanted to talk about the new update because obviously it's some pretty big news here in the Call of Duty series, but I don't feel like we should be super excited that now it only takes us 1 hour of in-game playtime to earn one item from the supply drop loophole. When you look at a game like Call of Duty World War II, where you could easily save up like 70 supply drops pretty quickly by playing the game, right? The supply drops are randomly thrown at you after playing the game. You could do challenges every single day to get them, and then you look what we have here in Black Ops 4, and it's much worse than Call of Duty World War II, and World War II wasn't even exactly a perfect system, so I don't see why everyone is like so excited about this update. It's better, don't get me wrong, like the earn rates of supply drops are better now than they were before, but they're not very good, and the supply drops themselves are much worse than they were before, so it seems like this is still a net negative for the Call of Duty community. But ladies and gentlemen, once again, that's all I have for you guys here in today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts and feedback down there in the comments, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.